and this collection plate just keeps getting passed around, and then they're hitting you up at the door for more money. And just something just seemed like scammy and off about that. And that whole interaction just put me off on Christianity as a whole. And
Hey everyone, I have an awesome guest for you guys today. This is a live streaming pro. Her channel is called ItsYaGirlSang, and if you are not joining her on her live streams, you are definitely missing out. So, welcome to the show, Michelle.
yeah, you can call me Michelle.
All right. So, welcome to the show. I'm so glad to have you. How's it going?
It's going awesome. It's going great. Recently got married. About
Congratulations.
Thank you. About to get baptized next month. I'm ecstatic.
That's awesome. And you were
Yeah,
you were talking about you had your baptism class yesterday and that
yeah,
it went well. What was
yeah.
one of the things that kind of stood out in your baptism class that you want to share?
Um, you know what's funny? It's not something that the pastor shared. There was a young woman that was in there that was like, I don't know, she had a lot of anxiety, and she even admitted that. So she came in. I guess her history was that she was like she grew up Catholic, and now she's like coming over to like the. I don't know if she's Baptist or non-denominational, but I know it's a Baptist church. But she came over there, and she just kept saying like, "Am I good enough? Am I going to be saved?" Because I don't know what she was taught about guilt, but she was just like sucked into it. And every time she would say something, like the pastor would give his answer, she'd be like, "Yeah, but they said this about repentance, and I just want to make sure I'm doing it right." And I don't know how long that went before I kind of just chimed in and I was like, "Hey, you came in here, and the first thing you said was like, Jesus came into your life like a year and a month ago. And you've noticed immense change since then. You said you're not the same person anymore." I'm like, "That's enough." I'm like, "You're trying every single day. It's not like a scoreboard is up where Jesus was like, you ain't do that, you don't hit this today, I'm gonna send you to hell." Like that's not how none of that works. And it was crazy because once I broke it down like that, because the pastor was like, like she was more calm after we kind of had that interaction.
That's Holy Spirit talking through you, girl, because
Yeah,
I find that to be the case with a lot of not necessarily denominations, but because I don't want to point the finger at this denomination or
yeah,
that denomination, but there's this message that because there's consequences for our sins that we're condemned, but that's a very human thing because when you accept Christ, he frees you. It was his
yeah,
sacrifice that was enough, and he forgives over and over and over. So i
yeah.
i think it's great that you share that with her. I bet you she really found that very valuable. Yeah, so now you haven't always been on fire for Jesus. So tell
No,
me a
no.
little bit about your upbringing and how you got to where you are now.
Yeah, so my upbringing, it's interesting because every time I tell people this, they're just like, "That's a weird household dynamic." But my dad was Jewish and my mom grew up Baptist. So whereas each one, they weren't really that deep in their religions either, but that's just kind of how my household was. So my earliest memories are like I was at this daycare. It was at a church, and we did go every Sunday. If I wasn't in Sunday school, depending on whatever service my mom took us to, I was sitting next to her and like my aunts in like the little pews here in the service. I didn't know what was going on, right? And then my mom was real big. She really wanted me to know the other side of my family as well, like the Jewish side. So there's times where I also went to the temple, and I remember that vividly. Don't know what they were saying because a lot of that was in Hebrew, but I remember one service, it had to have been Passover or something. 'Cause there was just a lot of food and it made me really excited. And I was just like, "Oh, we don't get this at the other church." And once I was out of daycare, my mom every once in a while would go with my aunts to like these other churches. And I noticed I didn't like them because like you're there for like hours at a time, and this collection plate just keeps getting passed around, and then they're hitting you up at the door for more money. And just something just seemed like scammy and off about that. And that whole interaction just put me off on Christianity as a whole. And like the more stories I heard from my mom's friends that grew up in the church, And they're just like, oh, we would give to the church every week, and now that we're struggling, they can't even like help us with a mortgage payment or something. And I was like, that's weird, you know?
Hmm.
So I started leaning more into like the Jewish side of things, but I still wasn't doing things correctly because my dad really wasn't teaching me much. Like Passover to him was like that Sunday, like on an Easter Sunday, we would make like matzo ball soup and eat matzah and stuff like that. And that would be it. It wouldn't be like the full week. I never knew the actual significance. My mom wanted me to celebrate Hanukkah, but she didn't know how that went. And my dad didn't properly do it. So I'm just getting gifts like every day. And I don't know why. And I know that's not the true significance, but as a kid, I'm like, oh, this is sweet. I'm getting like
Yeah.
8 days of gifts and I'm getting Christmas gifts on top of that. This is awesome. So I just kind of ran with it up until like 18, where I was just like, I don't really believe in any of this. So then I'm just an atheist for like the longest period of time until 9 months ago. Technically 11 months ago, but I didn't call myself Christian at that point. I was watching a Twitch streamer who's like a YouTuber now, and he was like, oh, I think I'm going to practice Christianity. If you guys start hearing talked about, don't be freaked out. It's just what I'm doing now. And it didn't bother me. And for 2 months straight, I'm just doing my own research and I'm like looking all this stuff up and I'm listening to what he's saying because I'm listening to him all day talk about the Bible now. And then when I'm not listening to him, I found a podcast from a rabbi and now I'm listening to this rabbi talk all day. And I'm like, man, I'm like, should I be Jewish? Should I be Christian? And I just kept, I don't know. So Christianity just kept resonating with me more until one day I was out walking doing a vlog and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna just be Christian. I was like, whenever this YouTuber starts his Christian Discord, I'll get the Bible and I'll just do Bible studies with them every day and I'll just move on from there. I get home like 2 minutes after I get in the house from my walk. I get the notification on my phone. He puts a new video up. I click on it and he's like, hey guys, the Discord's live and you can join it now. And we're going to do Bible study starting tomorrow. And I was like, this is the biggest sign if I've ever had one.
Isn't that crazy how God works? It's like the
Yeah.
timing is just too perfect.
Yeah.
So, okay, so you grew up with participating in church and synagogue, but never really understanding. And I can relate to that. So,
Yeah.
can you speak a little bit on maybe how it could have been different had there been a little bit more education? Because when you hit 18 years old, you were like, I don't believe any of this. So do you think there was some things that could have been taught to you that maybe would have prevented you at 18 from just leaving it completely?
Yeah. It could have, like from both sides, because like my dad didn't seem connected to anything. It's my mom kept pushing it because she just wanted me to learn. So I didn't really learn anything from him, which honestly, if he just took, I don't know, any type of steps to be like, hey, this is how this is properly done, maybe I'd be Jewish right now, like on a religious level. In terms of my mom, she kept falling in and out of like reading the Bible and going to church. So if she was more connected and like taught me better than like us just going whenever she went, it everything could have been different. I think about that a lot. Even down to the churches like her and my aunts were going to. Like if they didn't go to a prosperity church, maybe if it was like a church I'm going to now, yeah, I can see myself being Christian at a way younger age, but that just didn't happen, especially on like the Jewish side of things. When I was learning about Holocaust history and stuff, and you talk to some of the survivors, their mindset of like, well, if God was real, why this happened to me? So they labeled themselves Jewish atheists. I remember like as a teenager, I labeled myself that for a brief period of time because I'm like, yeah, they're right. If God's so real, why did all this happen? You know, and it wasn't that hard to then just take the next step of just being atheist because I'm like, well, I don't really know nothing about Judaism anyways. So what's the Jewish tag for? Because I like Hanukkah. Like I could
Right.
get
It's
these
like
presents
tradition.
regardless.
Tradition with no significance behind it, which in
Yeah.
reality, there's so much intellectual richness and history. But if, as a child, you're growing up in the world, if no one ever tells you, how
Yeah.
would you even know?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's wild. So you talked about, um, was there like any specific point or a moment or something that happened around 18 years old when you dropped the label that made you reject it instead of, for example, being Christian in name only? Why atheist? What was the motivation behind putting that label on yourself?
Um, I just believed in science. Like, and even then, it's crazy because you have to have a lot of faith to believe in that too, because a lot of that's just theories, you know? So me and my friends would be sitting there, would be like, yeah, but based on this theory, there's probably 7 other planets with like life on it, and this theory and this, and we came from fish and monkeys and all this other stuff. And you really think about it now, with what I know now, like a lot of Christianity, like science came from the Bible. Like a lot of earlier scientists used the Bible to prove so much, you know. It isn't until we get to like this day and age where you have a lot of atheist scientists that are like, oh no, that's crap. It's like, but how do you know? Like, because your whole thing is like, all of this came from nothing. Two random things collided, and boom, we have all of this. And it's like, but how did that happen? And where did those two random things come from? And they can never like put a pinpoint on it. Um, the whole like carbon dating thing, the fact that like at the height of the pandemic, they came out and was like, oh, carbon dating's wrong. So we're off on like all these like years and stuff. And I'm like, well, if you come to the point you think you're off, like, how do you even go about adjusting that to figure out you're right? Because they're like, oh, this mummy is probably 5,000 or 25,000 years old. And it's like, that's a huge gap. Like, that's way too. And I'm just giving it like a random example, but it was a lot of stuff like that. And I'm like, y'all don't even make sense half the time.
Yeah, and honestly, I feel like um it's kind of a failure of the church in a way because we treat the Bible stories as like very surface level, like
Yeah.
here's what happened. I mentioned this on Kyle's stream. Like I was taught like Noah's arky.
Yeah.
But so when I was faced with at 18, well, for me it wasn't 18, it was early 20s when I was faced with really deep intellectual scientific arguments. I had nothing to back it up. But in reality, just like you said, science doesn't disagree with the Bible.
Yeah,
It's
it
just
doesn't.
that we kind of we uprooted science from its truth, which is biblical truth, and put it over here. And now we're like playing around with theories and pretending that they are the root of the truth.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wish that in the church there would be more, especially with youth, like maybe not 7, 8, 9 year olds, but perhaps 13, 14, 15, 16, around that age, we're starting to really connect what they're learning at school scientifically with what happened in the Bible. And that
Yeah.
way they're not like caught off guard when atheists are trying to, intellectually push them in a different direction. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Because there's tons of biblical evidence. And when you mention that to people, they get so mad.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, you just don't want to hear the truth. But like, if an archaeologist is like, oh, we found this tablet with these words on it that matches what Moses was saying in the Bible, where do you think that came from, right? Or they'd be
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, we actually found we found the area where the Hittites actually lived, and we found all their stuff. It's like, oh, they're in the Bible, like they now found like their whole civilization. You think all this just made up? Like,
Yeah, or the chariot wheels in the Red Sea,
yeah.
the Shroud of Turin, which
Hmm.
are you familiar with that one?
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't even know about that until like I don't know, maybe 2 months ago, and it
Yeah.
blew my mind. Like, why don't we know these things? But we're so sure in our society of our atheism and our
Hmm.
science, based logic,
Hmm.
but we don't even know of the very real evidence. We don't even know that the Dead Sea Scrolls proved so much
Yeah.
of Christianity, but I had never heard of that. When I
Yeah.
chose to be an atheist, I never heard of the Dead Sea Scrolls. What's that?
Yeah.
You know? I was gonna ask because you cover a lot of what I cover as well. You talk about culture, you talk about some of the lies that are going on with feminism,
Hmm.
with red pill. I know you covered that video with Lila Rose on the Whatever podcast yesterday
Yeah.
or the other day.
Yeah.
And I wanted to get your thoughts on, especially as a newlywed now, what are your thoughts about the biblical definition of marriage and the lies of the culture?
I I wish everybody could follow the biblical way. Like if I can go back in time, I wish I could do it. And it's so funny. Like I'm in a Christian Discord group, and out the blue, they like messaged me last night. They were like, "Can you tell us the love story of like you and your husband?" And I'm sitting in my mind, I'm like, if they only knew this isn't like a Disney tale, like we've messed up so much. And I gave them like a brief little breakdown, and they were like, "Were y'all not saved when y'all first got together?" It's like, no. Like I just became Christian like 9 months ago. Like, and I think about it's so funny because in culture, when I was in high school, everybody, actually, to be fair, people started having sex when I was in fourth grade. And I don't
Wow.
even think you know what sex is at that point. So to me, that was weird. Being in sixth grade and seeing like girls not be in school anymore because they got pregnant is very weird. Seeing guys drop out because they have to like figure out how to be a baby daddy at that age. It's so off. So when I'm in high school, I'm thinking me waiting until 18. It's like, oh, I'm doing the right thing because I'm an adult now, like for the first time me having sex. But that was still wrong. Like when you view I don't know, viewing sex as like unmarried, I guess that's the best way to put it. It never felt right. I don't know how to explain it. Even though I've done it with the same person that I'm married to like this whole time, it just always felt off and I was never comfortable. And I was just always like tensed because I was all like, even though I can't have kids, like unless some crazy miracle pops off, like STDs just always scared me. Cause like just because I know I'm being faithful and I would hope my partner's being faithful, the culture is like, oh, you got to have a side chick or a side dude, and this is the type of person you have to be. So I was just always on edge, and I was never truly like relaxed with the act itself. Versus like getting married, it's just like, whoo, this is way better. Like this, everybody should do it this way.
Right, right. And there's just this perception that Christians are prudes and all this stuff, but it's
Yeah.
really about the level of trust and intimacy because
Hmm.
that was the way we were designed to be. So I
Yeah.
hate the culture and how they just twist everything. And
Yeah.
especially I just did a video about the same thing that you did the video on the other day about Lila Rose talking to that
Yeah.
OnlyFans pastor.
That's so
And
weird.
oh my
It was
gosh, it
so
was so
weird.
cringy. And then the red pill guy. So I have two
Oh
sons.
yeah.
I have two sons. They're still babies. My oldest is 3.
Oh.
But I think about this all the time, this message that culture is sending boys.
Hmm.
And it just frustrates me because it's like this red pill logic that's like, oh, sow your wild oats,
Hmm.
find you a virgin, and that's the one you want to be with, but don't marry her, but also cheat on her because that's cool too, because you're wired that way. And that's what that guy was saying in the
Yeah.
he's like, I'm just wired that way. And it's like,
Like, no,
okay,
you're
so
not.
you don't have an understanding of lust, do you?
Nope.
And
Nope.
that's, yeah, that was kind of one of those things that um just caught me off guard because I'm like, oh, okay, even even in Judaism, there's a disconnect with the lust thing. And I
Oh, it
know
is.
you've talked about that before. Do you want to
It
share
is.
some thoughts about that?
Yeah, it's so funny. That was that Matt Frad and Dennis Prager. It it just didn't make sense what he was saying. But it's so funny because right after we did that video, I found out that one of the co-owners of Pornhub is a Jewish rabbi. So, yeah. And I was gonna talk
Wow.
about it in stream, but I think that's the day my camera messed up or something, so I couldn't go on stream and talk about it. But yeah, the way some of them also look at sex is very weird because Christians, actual Christians, not just like, hey, I'm a Christian, I can do whatever I want. But like actual ones don't look at like sex that way. It's like I'm gonna save myself for the right person. We're gonna get married, and then we're gonna be together and be fruitful and multiply. And yada yada yada. I don't understand the whole culture of like, oh, it's okay to like if you see somebody hot, it's just like, oh, it's all right to think about them in your mind, the things you would do and not actually do it and watch porn and all this other stuff because it's not okay. Like, because I also had like because they were talking about porn in that conversation. I used to consume porn like a lot, and that's not okay. Like the way it starts off is innocent because you're just like, oh, what is this? And like especially also depending on age when you started. I should have never been watching porn at the age I watched it. Like I was still technically a kid, and that should have never happened. And it starts with like softcore, and then you just start moving up. So
Mhm.
once it goes from there, and I know each person is different. That's why I was trying to give like all these random examples during that stream. But like it is gonna get worse and worse. You might start with like man and woman, and depending who you are, you might go down the rabbit hole of orgies or same sex or anime or whatever it's called, like Yuri, yeah, whatever the terms are. Like
Yeah.
you're gonna start going down weird rabbit holes that don't make sense.
Yeah, because it desensitizes you.
Yeah, it
It's like,
does.
oh, at first it's just like, OMG, it's pornography. This is wild. And
Yeah.
it gets you to where you want to be in that moment. But then that doesn't satisfy anymore. So then you're like, well, now I got to seek different avenues. And I'm exploring. What am I
Mhm.
interested in? And it's wild, like you said, how early it happens.
Yeah.
And I'm hearing stories of like 9 years old, 8 years old
Mhm.
already having problems with that. So it's scary.
Yeah. I remember at one point all of my friends like when they were all saying when they started watching stuff and I'm like, "Dang, we all jacked up." Like it's just
It's crazy. And if you think about it too, I heard I don't know if you're familiar with uh Pastor Vadi Bokum.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so he talked about the culture, how we're living in a pornographic culture.
Yeah, we are.
And essentially, we're already all the time at like level 3.
Mhm.
So, if you're at level 9 and 10, like the most extreme, disgusting forms of pornography,
Mhm.
we don't want you to get back to like a 5 or a 6. We want you to get to a 0, but it's like almost impossible at this point with the culture.
Yeah, cuz they promote it in everything. Everything is so sexualized. And it's crazy when you don't realize that in the moment, but like it truly is cuz when I don't even know if they make music videos anymore. I haven't watched TV in so long, but like I remember when I was growing up, I get why certain parents were like, we don't want y'all watching MTV and BET and stuff because the girls would be like half naked in the videos. You got the video vixens and everything. And that's sexualized. You could watch something on TV now. It's in kid shows now. Like now you got the whole alphabet community in there somewhere pumping it out, pronouns, half naked people, but it's okay if you say like they drag or something. And it is just weird. It's down to like the books now. Like you look at the books in the school libraries, which is why I advocate for homeschooling. Because if you homeschool, you ain't gotta worry about none of that if you're able to do it. So
Right. That's definitely true. And I plan on going down that route myself. Um, but even then you still have to like, okay, like really, what do we do about social media? What do we do about,
mhm.
because you're still opening up yourself or your kids to the web and the darkness.
Yeah,
So at least you're avoiding the whole public school nonsense, because that's just
yeah.
wild.
It is, especially because lately there's been more books going into public school libraries, and then the parents are reading it at like the teacher conference, whatever it is, where they talk to the school board once a month, and they're reading it out, and you got the people on the board are like, "Oh, that's disgusting. We don't want to hear that." It's like, but this is in the library for the kids, so you want the
Right.
sixth and seventh graders or whatever reading this. This is porn, basically, but you don't want to hear it. That doesn't make any sense. Yeah.
Especially with like the whole, like you said, the whole alphabet soup nonsense going on. It's like these teachers are so proud to push it. And I saw a story about these private chat rooms that they could join
Mm-hmm.
where they have like an escape button, when your mom walks in the room, just, so you can't. It's
Yep.
just, it's Jeffrey Marsh vibes, honestly.
He's so creepy. I
It's
think
wild.
I did a video on him like months ago, and I put like I was like he reminds me of a demon, and I put like the gif of a demon, and they looked just alike, like right
Right.
next to
His
each other.
smile is sinister.
It is
It's crazy. I just can't even. I never would have thought. I'm 31 and I think you're 33, right?
5.
35? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you don't look a day older than 30.
Thank you.
But
I'll take it. I'll take it.
so I never would have thought when I was like even 18 that this would have gotten to this point. Like they're
Yeah,
all like, "Oh, Christians always talking about slippery slope," but it's like, no,
but it's
seriously,
true.
they were right though.
Yeah, it's very true. Everything I think I hate to put it this way, but like the Obama administration really started like with everything. So for the LGTB community, when they were just like we want the same rights like for marriage. And everybody was like, let them, so many people are unhappy married, let them be unhappy married. That was like the joke for the comedians at the time. And then that turned into, well, we also want these rights now and these rights. And now we want trans rights. And now we want map rights. And it's like, well, how far are we going to go with the rights thing? Because they got the same rights me and you got anyway. So I don't know what rights is being fought for. And things are getting just weirder as we go. Like, I don't need a kid to go to a story time hour with like a drag queen or something because that doesn't make sense. It's like if you want to read books to a kid out the goodness of your heart, just read a book to a kid. It doesn't have to be centered around this. You don't have to be like twerking in front of them. You don't have to have these like stage shows where you're bringing them on. There was like a video recently where they brought like little kids up at a drag concert and they had them twerking on stage and all the adults in the audience were like, yeah. And I'm like, this is such pedo vibes. Like all of this is weird because
Yeah.
I don't want to see a kid twerking. Like if my foray is like I want to see some adults dress, drag, and entertain me, I don't want to see kids doing it. If that's like my thing I'm into, that's kind of weird. So
Yeah.
like I don't I don't know. I don't get a lot of it. We
And
just
it's
keep going down.
yeah, and it's just like you said, we just keep going down because I remember when I would have discussions with veterans who went overseas and they would talk about how dark some of the things they saw was. And one of the things that was mentioned was over there, they would have like these kids, boys performing for them in a sexualized manner.
I know what
And
you're talking
it
about.
was just really dark. And I remember thinking, wow, I would never think, other than To Catch a Predator, like that would never happen here. Like that would never be normalized. But what are we doing right now?
It is.
It's
Yeah.
wild.
I remember I was like 2012 or 20 something like that. I had a security guard job and I remember there's this one guy, he used to dress really weird. It was like a super old guy, but he would try to dress like he was a teenager. And he would just sit in the mall every day. And I remember one day one of the other guards was like, "Oh, that's I forgot what the dude's name was." They were like, "That's such and such. Um, make sure no kids go around him." So red flag immediately. I was like, why am I making sure no kids go around him? That's a weird thing to kind of just toss out about a random person sitting in the food court. And they were like, So he's known to go to Thailand to do things with children because he knows if he does it here, he going to jail. But because we know that, just make sure there's no kids around him because we can't kick him out if he not doing nothing. But we don't want nothing to happen. And I was like, this is weird. Like, just kick him out. Like, what? Like
Yeah, for sure.
I gotta play like savior to all the children in the mall now because like y'all don't want to kick this dude out. It's
Yeah,
so
that's
weird.
wild. Yeah, and I mean, it's kind of like, well, we don't want to hurt his feelings. At least today's
Yeah.
day, it's about that. Like, well, we don't want to offend, especially there are certain populations in the Christian world that are like, well, no, we'll go by their pronouns or we'll
Hmm.
be friendly towards that. What do you make of that?
I can't stand it. I can't stand it at all. I don't think those are real churches. You know how they be talking about the synagogue of Satan and wolves in sheep's clothing and all that. That's all them churches are. Because if Jesus was here, I'm telling you, my man was flipping tables because they was selling stuff in his father's house. You don't think he'd be going in these places and be like, what's wrong with y'all? No, y'all got to get up out of here. He'd be taking the drag queens and all the fake little pastors. He'd be eating them out the church. Like,
For real.
there's no way these would be allowed if he was here on earth today. Like, there's just
I'm
no
just like, come on, Jesus. Can we
way.
go? I'm
You
over
speed
this.
this up. Like, lift me up already.
All right, saying, well, that was awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. Where can people find you? What time do you go live?
So you guys can find me on my YouTube channel. It's your girl saying I go live every Monday through Thursday at 7 p.m. EST. Um, I am gonna get back to making videos. I gotta wait for the money to get released on the 22nd because YouTube don't like me. Every time I do videos, every time I do live streams, I get demonetized. They're starting to get petty now and go to like my old videos and they're trying to age restrict and like delete them. And no matter what I say, they're just like, nah, you did that. You
Wow.
did that. We're gonna kick you off. So before I put new videos up, we gotta make sure the charity money goes through. Oh, that's another thing. We're doing a charity right now on my channel. It's a backpack drive. Um, Jasmine donated, a bunch of y'all donated. We have, I'm gonna rattle this off real quick before we get up out of here.
Yeah.
So far, we got 48 book bags. We got 146 folders, 24 packs of loose leaf paper, 24 boxes of crayons, 12 packs of pencils, 10 packs of erasers, 8 packs of ink pens, 4 packs of highlighters, 12 packs of scissors, 48 rulers, and 3 binders. So we almost have everything. Like
Wow.
we're close. The binders and the notebooks are like expensive. I'm trying to figure out how to get those cheaper, but we almost have everything. And then after that, they were asking to also put like deodorant and toothbrush and toothpaste and stuff in the bags. So we almost there.
Yeah.
We
Send me
almost there.
some links. I'm gonna share them in the description for anyone watching.
I got you. I got
All
you.
right. Well, and also before we go, because you have this awesome Christian game room. So I
Oh
know
yeah,
some
yeah.
people watching are interested in gaming and that kind of stuff. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, if you guys are gamers, so what I end up doing on Wednesdays and Thursdays on my channel, it's called Christian Game Room, and I'll play whatever game for the day is. And in between like matches, or if I pause, if it's like a story-based game, we'll also watch videos. So I know we've talked about Mike Todd before. Just like Jasmine said, we talk about the culture, uh, just a lot, anything that involves Christianity, or where I could put Christianity in there. We talk about it in between playing games. So you get a mixture of both worlds. I think it's been working out really great. It's taken off really well on the Rumble side of things versus YouTube. Like Rumble, that audience loves it.
Wow.
So
Okay. That's
yeah,
excellent. Well, thank you so much for your time. We're so glad to have you. And if you're not following It's Your Girl Saying, you're missing out. You need to go do that right now.
yeah,
Thanks
yeah.
for joining me on today's episode of Bold Reflections. And as always, God bless.